Okay, Commissioners, the next item is item number 4. It's for application for certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, 41 West 11th Street, located within the Greenwich Village Historic District. It's a Greek revival-style row house built in the mid-1840s. The application is to demolish the existing rear yard addition and construct rooftop and rear yard additions, install a pergola and planters at the roof, and modify the areaway.
Good morning, Commissioners. For Northwest Preservation Department staff, this application is for 41 West 11th Street in the Greenwich Village Historic District. The proposal includes a rear and rooftop addition. The rooftop addition will extend over the roof of the rear addition, so it will create an L shape at the back. They are also doing some alterations to the grade of the rear yard and making some adjustments to the roof as part of the rooftop addition. And I just wanted to draw your attention to something that's slightly unusual. The shape of the rooftop addition is actually U-shaped. So you're seeing a terrace in this middle area, and the addition makes a U-shape. So that's the rooftop addition, and this is the portion of it that will extend over the full height rear addition. At the front areaway, they're making modifications to the areaway, which include installing a stroller enclosure, and the applicant is here to go through each of the aspects of the proposal.
Great.
Thank you, Bernadette.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is my first PowerPoint presentation, so bear with me. I've always done boards before, so I'll try to work my way through this. My name is Todd Ernst. I'm a local architect here in Manhattan, and this is our proposed renovation of this Greek Revival row house from the mid-1840s. As Bernadette pointed out, there's several highlights of what we're doing, but essentially this is the existing Greek Revival facade. There's an Italianate balcony that was added at some point right here, and our goal is, in the way we've produced mock-up, working with... Okay, let's get a little comic relief. Working very closely with Emma, we did mock-ups of the rooftop addition to ensure that it's not visible from the street. And I'll show you some slides. There are some flue extensions that are visible, and those are mandated by code once we're doing the enlargement. So on the facade itself, we're going to replace the windows with matching historic windows by a custom manufacturer named Riley Windows. So when all is said and done, the facade will look actually as it does today, just with updated windows and a new 6-panel entrance door. It has a kind of stock oak 6-panel door right now that you can see in the photos. This is the proposed front elevation, and it looks domineering, but in perspective, you won't see this rooftop addition as proven by the mock-up that we had commissioned. And the whole mock-up is above this existing cornice level, which obviously we're going to maintain the cornice. This drawing right here is the rear facade, and it's actually a fairly nondescript rear facade. It's been modified over time with a 2-story addition at the garden and parlor level, and then a 4 Seasons greenhouse was added at some point. And then you have the 3rd floor at this level right here. And this is another major component of the proposed design, which is to essentially remove the rear facade. We intend to recycle all the brick masonry and then reconstruct the facade in this configuration. And we worked very carefully to have a balance of the masonry and the fenestration, so it didn't look out of place relative to other row houses. And I'll show you in the photos the context of the back of this house next to other houses. And I think once you see the photos, it's a good balance. And this is the rooftop addition. And I know this drawing looks a little abstract, but the inspiration here, which you can see clearly in our sections, is a artist Garrett skylight. And we wanted to differentiate the addition from the rest of the house clearly, so that as someone looked at this structure over time, they could see that this was an addition, and the vocabulary changes as the building went up vertically. And it's a lighter construction visually as well, much like you'd see an artist skylight. I'll try to move this forward. This is a study of the figure ground urban massing of this block. And this is basically turn-of-the-century 1904 Sanborn map. And the study we did was to look at how this void space or this inner public space was shaped at the turn of the century versus today. And you can see it's quite different. We wanted to understand the impact of our construction and how we related to the context of what was there and what is here now. Our subject property is right here. It's sandwiched in between two other Greek Revival row houses. And essentially, we're not protruding further out than the house at the west at number 43. And there's been major development at this end of the west end of the block. This is the new school. And there's some fairly substantial residential and institutional buildings. So it's the evolution of a city block. And what we're trying to do is be harmonious with what's there now. This is essentially a building department zoning diagram. And I wanted to bring to your attention something that Bernadette brought up in her preamble was this is the front of the building here. This is the stoop. Our addition is towards the back third of the existing house. And that's the fourth floor, essentially a penthouse right there. And as Bernadette said, it kind of L's over on top of the mass of where the building was previously. And you can see in the section here, it looks a little out of focus, our penthouse or fourth floor is set quite far back from the main facade. So again, in elevation, it looks imposing because 2D elevations are not really representative of perspective, but it's a very small rooftop addition. And this other outline here is the outline of the allowable zoning envelope. And we have, projecting above the zoning envelope, parapets and a rooftop mechanical space, which are permitted obstructions. Another key feature of the design is the addition of a first floor deck, a parlor deck with a stair extension to the yard. And also, we're changing the garden level floor elevation or the basement elevation. We're dropping the floor by 8 inches. And I wanted to bring this up because it leads to some other details about the project, which is, or we're dropping it because it's a low ceiling height and we're adding, it's around 8 feet and we're adding finishes and also some mechanical stuff. So we wanted to gain some ceiling height to accommodate that equipment. But what it leads us to do is, as we exit the house at the back, we need to drop the existing grade an additional 8 inches. So we step down, and then the rear yard at the northern section, which is back here, we're proposing to drop that down by an additional 2 foot 4 inches. And the backyard design is actually still, the landscape design is still in development by our landscape architect, Evan Lai. And just to be very frank, I've had discussions with the neighbors who have concerns about the grade change in the backyard relative to their yards. So this elevation right here may be subject to change based on the design and the neighbors' concerns once they're fully registered. But we do need the step down here to coordinate with our drop of the garden level. And it's only 8 inches, it's just so we can get ductwork around the ceilings and some equipment in the center section of the garden level. So that's our essentially zoning page. This is a historic photograph from the WTA tax photo. And you can see the windows are essentially what we're replacing here. It does show a 4-panel door in this photo, although we're proposing the 6-panel. And it shows the Italianate balcony that I described before. So then over here, this is the context of the block that we're in. And this is the large apartment building that we saw in the block plan, the E-shaped tenement-style building, which will basically, between the gray townhouse here and that building, it obstructs any views of our rooftop development. This is a view from the west. There's the large apartment building. And close-up of the Italianate balcony, and another close-up showing the stoop and the existing bluestone, which we intend to preserve. There's one or two small broken pieces that we'll replace with bluestone to match. And this is a view from the roof. This is looking southwest, and you can see the artist skylights on these townhouses, and that was the inspiration for our rooftop addition. And then this is a view to the southeast, and you can see there's kind of mixture of roofscape elements. So the context isn't totally uniform, but it's all homogeneous in a kind of nice way, scale-wise. This is the subject property here, 41 West 11th. This is our project. That's the Four Seasons greenhouse I described. This is the addition. I believe it was done probably between the 40s and 70s because it has rusting steel lintels and not brick arches. This is the townhouse at 39 West 11th, just to the east of our project. And this is the townhouse just to the west at 43. And you can see we're, scale-wise, they're all kind of similar, but they are different, scale and treatment architecturally. And when I show you a blow above the elevation, I think our figured round is a kind of hybrid of the two. This is fairly oppressive and kind of bureaucratic looking, and this is very modern and obviously a lot of void compared to the ground. This is the grade level that we have to lower by 8 inches. Our new back doors will be in this zone right here, so that elevation will drop. This is a photo from the existing back deck of that rear yard I was describing that we will moderate or modulate or not change the grade depending on our interaction with the neighbors, because we have a nice yard, we want to improve it, and also we want to be good neighbors and not disturb anyone else's property, which can happen when you excavate close to property lines. This is a very interesting photo montage. This is 43 West 11th, which shows their penthouse addition. This is our roof. You can see the window here from 43. Our roof actually pitches forward, which is somewhat unusual. Most townhouses we do, the roof pitches backwards to drain. But what this did for us was it created a large attic space in the back section of the roof, and we're able to sink our addition into that about 5 feet, so it minimized the visual impact of the rooftop addition. And this is the addition to the right at number 39. And again, it's fairly glassy, much like the rear facade that we saw. And here's their front railing. Our railing will line up more or less with this railing as well to keep it out of the sight line.
Could you go to the facade and show the
Sure.
design?
I'm sorry to ramble on, Commissioner.
Okay.
Those are photos of the mock-up, and here's a blow-up of the facade.
Okay.
And again, this railing here will align with the neighbor's railing, which is also out of the sight line. This is the rooftop addition. The materials up here are lead-coated copper, so it's a different architectural vocabulary. It's not shiny, it's very dull, but it is metallic and looks lighter, and actually against the sky will be not as imposing. And this is really just the facade restored, and I'll keep moving. This is the back elevation. This whole plane here is sloping away. It's set back about a foot, and it slopes at an angle away from the facade to, again, replicate that north-facing skylight imagery and also make the structure less imposing to the rear public space. And here's the back deck. This is the grade that was lowered down 8 inches, and this is the existing facade that you can see. And this is a comparison of the existing plans and the proposed plans. And in the cellar, the configuration is very similar. We are going to dig out in the cellar, but there's no underpinning. We're just digging to get a little more head height and using a benching technique because we're dropping the garden level to 8 inches. We need to pick up some more room. This is the garden level or first basement plan, existing and proposed. Those are the doors that go out to the yard. This element is gone now. I apologize for the inaccuracy in the presentation. And this is what Bernadette referred to as the stroller parking garage. And it's a temporary wooden structure. The client has 2 small children, and they're expecting more children. And it's just a temporary structure to push the stroller into, and it will be removed once the kids are all, walking together. And another feature, we're using the old engineer's hatch to recess the garbage cans flush with grade, so they're not projecting up in the front yard. Something we did on West 4th Street a couple years ago, and it was very successful.
Okay, if you can move along.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks.
And there's the plans going up. This is the U-shaped terrace that Bernadette described, but it's shaped mainly by the stair bulkhead, and on this side, the chimney extensions and a small powder room for the 4th floor plan. And some sections that show our building relative to the adjacent buildings, and everything basically, is homogeneous and kind of fits in with the context. And this is a blow-up of the front yard. There's the stroller parking, which is temporary, otherwise everything stays the same. And these are just our landscapers renderings with greenery. And that's...
We have shots of the visibility of the mock-up?
Yes, I'll go back to that.
All right. Non-visual.
And this is where I need Peter's help out, because he...
So on page
This one, here we go. So this is what the mock-up constructed. Here's our Italianate balcony, and you can see a flue extension here. And if you see in this photo, there's a flue extension right there. This is the chimney mast. And on the other side, there's the 2 flue extensions right there. And those are the only things that are visible from the street. The railing was visible, but based on our meetings with Emma Waterloo, we moved everything back so it was out of the sight line. And so that's basically, you're going to see just a couple metallic flue extensions. And if you look at the historic photo of the original, you can see all kinds of flue extensions. Obviously, people were having draft problems back then too. And that's really an overview of the project. Thanks for being patient. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, thank you. All right, questions for the applicant? Any questions? Yes, Roberta?
So from the back, you can't see anything either, is that correct? What can you see from the back? You're saying you can't see anything from the street,
From the street,
but can
only
you
the...
see from a street behind the
No,
building?
you can't.
So
We've been all the way around the block, and the buildings on the north side are even taller. They're fairly more substantial townhouses with rooftop improvements that block visually. So the block is essentially enclosed. So from no public thoroughfare can you see the extension.
And I also had a question about the back. So you have to take out, so you're building over or removing the top floor too, right?
Yes,
So
we are.
you want to build on top of the existing L,
We're actually
or tear it out
We're
and,
going to tear it and use its
Same.
footprint.
but build up to the height, beyond the height of the existing building from the rear.
That's correct, Commissioner.
And your building isn't identical to any of the adjacent
It's not. They've all been modified, as well as ours. Ours was modified more modestly than the adjacent two.
Any other questions? All right, are there any speakers on this item? Yes, Kelly Carroll?
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. HDC finds the rooftop addition acceptable as care was taken to conceal its visibility and preserve the low-scale experience of West 11th Street. While the proportions of the rear facade are appealing, the committee resolved that smaller masonry openings on the rear might be a more successful composition, and we suggest reducing the amount of glazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers? All right, Community Board 2 recommends approval. Yes, I'm sorry, please come forward and speak. You'll be given 3 minutes. Thank you.
I won't take 3 minutes. but
Okay.
Hopefully. I am a resident of West 12th Street, and 41 West 11th is practically in our laps. My wife and I live in a brownstone composed of in a co-op composed of 2 adjoining brownstones. And we are deeply concerned about what will or will not happen in the backyard of this house as it pertains to the quality of all of our lives as we live them now. We're concerned about the trees. There's an article in the New Yorker from the mid-1930s that was written by E.B. White, where very specific details of the greater backyard are mentioned, including our ginkgo tree and our sycamore tree, and roots travel and trees have lives, and undoubtedly there are roots from these trees that in some cases are 100 years old that are traveling into the yard of 41 West 11th. So we, as a co-op, and I as an individual, are very concerned about what's going to happen when they're excavating in that backyard and installing a gas fireplace. And so I mean, I've already made my concerns clear to Todd. He understands me, I understand the project. I just want the commission to be aware that there is a lot of concern in the community about what's happening in the backyard. And perhaps known to you or unbeknownst to you, when the community board received this presentation, they opted not to opine on the rear yard project because they couldn't agree on the appropriateness of it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Are there any more speakers? All right, Community Board 2 has sent in their resolution. They recommend approval of the rooftop additions and the front facade restoration, but would prefer to see the stroller garage being moved eastward to the current location of the garbage receptacle. The stroller garage being moved eastward to the current location of the garbage receptacle. All right, do you want to just comment on that?
Oh, yeah, sure. And again, to address Tim's concerns, my client is very flexible with the rear yard design, and I'll make sure we work closely with the neighbors to do our best to make sure no one's disturbed and their yards aren't disturbed, because the main project here is the house. The yard is...
Right, and you haven't, the yard is not really in front of us right now, right?
And the stroller parking, which currently there's a garbage enclosure adjacent to number 39, which projects about 8 feet in front of our building, so it's kind of tucked into this little corner. And what the community board has asked is that we replace or place the new stroller parking in that inside corner. And I don't think my client has a problem moving it. Again, it's a temporary structure. And later, this will be gone, that will have been gone, and then we'll have a beautiful front yard. And again, my client is very flexible and wants to work with the neighbors. So we can make that modification and submit it to Landmarks for the final record set.
In terms of the definition of temporary, if we approve it here, then are we approving it as a temporary thing? And is that...
That's an excellent question.
Yes, Mark, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, the commission has, I mean, there's temporary rules that the staff can approve things. Those are for a year or less. So the commission has in the past approved things for periods of years, and I think we could certainly condition any approval of this here for some period of years that approximates the growth of a child.
Right. Okay.
If it's temporary, it's, we'll subject to 1 year.
Yes,
so the level of the rear yard at the rear, where you have the barbecue now, is that the same as the neighbor's level? Their yard?
Peter, it is basically the same. Yes. Peter Allen is my project manager, and we had a survey done, and we just get to the photo. I'll use this to point. Our yards are basically the same level here, according to the survey. But this area is already depressed for the walkout garden level. So what we'll do is we'll work with our client to maintain all these grades back here and just adjust our design. And we'll submit that to Landmarks for the final approval and DOB.
Now, it seemed that you had that barbecue on the other side in a drawing before, right?
Yes.
Okay, and if it were there, then you get rid of the problem that you could have.
Our client wanted to relocate it from this side to the back. And actually, based on my discussions with the neighbors, I'm going to dissuade them from putting anything back there besides the wall that's intended to go there. There's already a fence there and vegetation. Because we want to not, again, make a focal point in the middle of the backyard. And my client is very flexible and will...
So you could have that
Yeah, yeah, and we'll probably actually just not install it. There's also some budget concerns, and I think that's one of the first things that can go.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right. Comments and,
I think then we should include that decision to not have that barbecue at that rear yard as part of our vote. If that's, that's part of the addition.
right, and
Or do we not care? Do we not vote on those things?
I don't, it's not in our, the yard stuff is not, is it before us? Is it a part of our drawing set, Emma?
It's not really, it's something that was brought to the staff's attention only today. This notion of, the 8 inches was always there, but it was the 2-yard excavation in the rear. We don't really have any documentation, and I think that I just heard the applicant say that they're probably not going to do it. Is that what so I think it's not before us, and if they choose to try to bring it back at some point, they can come back as an amendment. But right now, there's no
Okay.
it's just the 8 inches to sort of, for head height and for the walkout.
Okay. Yes, any, yes. Okay, yes. Any comments and? That noise?
Just in my head?
No, it's not.
No, it's definitely in your head.
It's hanging up the pipes.
Well, I think this is a very restrained approach to a beautiful and restrained building, and I don't have any issues with any of the proposed changes and additions.
I agree. All right, in that case, we can close the hearing. Chris, would you like to read that?
Sure. To the matter of 41 West 11th Street, Greenwich Village Historic District. Application is to demolish the existing rear yard addition and construct rooftop and rear yard additions, install a pergola and planters at the roof, and modify the areaway. I recommend approval, finding that the construction of additions at the simply designed rear facade and roof and modest adjustments to the rear yard and front areaway will not alter, eliminate, or conceal any significant architectural features of the building or site, that other rear yard incursions and larger apartment buildings exist within the block, and the addition will not project deeper into the center of the block than adjacent additions, that the design, volume, and massing of the rear of the neighboring buildings have been highly altered. Therefore, the presence of a full-height rear addition at this building will not disrupt a unified row. That the extension of the rooftop addition over the rear addition will be in keeping with added top floors at the neighboring properties in terms of placement, and that the addition will be designed to recall the sloped north-facing studio windows historically found throughout the district, that the masonry openings at the rear addition will maintain a division between floor levels and be residential in scale, that the brick and metal materials palette of the additions will be harmonious with the building type and the character of the row, that the limited adjustments to grade level at the rear yard will be compatible with this block, which features modest variations in grade levels, that except for views of the chimneys from limited vantage points, none of the work at the rear or roof will be visible from any public thoroughfares, that the size and simple design of the chimney will be in keeping with existing chimneys in neighboring properties which are visible over the row and will not draw undue attention to these installations, that the reconfiguration of the areaway will retain the existing sound bluestone and increase the overall amount of bluestone paving, maintaining and returning a historic paving material, and that the stroller enclosure and the sunken trash containers with an at-grade cover will not replace historic paving and will be simply designed, modest in size, and discreet in placement.
All in favor? Any opposed? This application's been approved.